Hello everyone, how's it going? Welcome to Crack a Pack a Day. Every day, I'm going to open a booster pack of Magic the Gathering cards and evaluate the contents, choosing one of them to take as if I were taking part in a draft and this was pack 1, pick 1. After yesterday's Throwback Thursday, today we're going to be back to opening Magic Origins. Let's take a look. Our first card is Infectious Bloodlust, an aura for 1 and a red. It targets a creature, and the creature gets +2/+1, haste, and must attack each turn if able. It also has the ability that when the creature dies, you may search your library for another copy of Infectious Bloodlust and put it into your hand. This is one of the so-called gotta catch 'em all cycle from Magic Origins, which rewards you for drafting multiple copies of a certain card. In this case, it's an aura that fetches copies of itself. Unfortunately, it suffers from the same downside that most auras do, which is if you remove the creature out from under it, then you just got 2 for 1. Generally, I don't think this has enough power to be worth considering a first pick. And Shrouding Missed, an instant for white. Target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to it this turn. If it's renowned, untap it. This is a pretty run-of-the-mill combat trick. You're probably going to be happy running one of these in any white deck. It gives your creature a small boost, prevents it from dying, and it can also be a surprise trick if it's renowned because you can untap it. If your opponent was attacking because you had no untapped creatures, this could be a very nasty surprise. Generally, this is an average card, not something that I'd fancy taking pack 1, pick 1. Blight Assassin, a 2/2 Elf Assassin for 2 and a black. When it enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls gets -1/-1 until end of turn. This is a pretty good card in my opinion. Although it's a little small for its size, it can be a 2 for 1. You can get a creature and you can kill one of your opponent's creatures. There are a moderate number of creatures in the set with 1 toughness, which means that its -1/-1 ability can actually kill something, even if it's just the Thopter token. Overall, a reasonable pick, perhaps not what I'd want pack 1, pick 1 though. Screeching Skarb, a 2/1 zombie for 1 and a blue. When it enters the battlefield, put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. This is close to being a bear. It's a 2/1 for 2 rather than a 2/2 for 2. That can be detrimental in some cases against things with 1 power and 3 toughness, or even the previous card Blight Assassin. Nonetheless, it's still a reasonable early play for a blue deck. The ability means you're probably going to want it more in a blue-black deck than any other given deck, because black has a lot of tools for doing things with cards in the graveyard. It's an average card, not something I fancy taking first. Elvish Visionary, a 1/1 Elf Shaman for 1 and a green. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. Despite being undersized for its mana cost, Elvish Visionary is a pretty reasonable card. When it enters the battlefield, you draw another card. It replaces itself and you get a 1/1 creature from it. It's probably best in the black-green elf deck, where you're looking for a critical number of elf cards. It also works well there because black-green has a sacrifice theme. This is a card that you can sacrifice for a benefit, but not be down on card advantage. It's a role player, but perhaps not something I'd want to take first. Dreadwaters, a sorcery for 3 and a blue. Target player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, where X is the number of lands you control. Generally, mill isn't a successful strategy in Limited. Despite the smaller deck sizes, you won't have the sheer quantity of mill cards to be able to force your opponent to deck themselves. In addition, Magic Origins is a fast and aggressive format. There aren't that many great defensive creatures which you can sit behind to keep playing your Dreadwaters. This isn't a card I want to take. Rox Maulers, a 4/4 Rhino Soldier for 4 and a green, with Trample and Renown too. Rox Maulers is a pretty nice card. I like it. It's big, it's got Trample, and after the first time it hits, it makes itself a 6/6. Despite being a good role player, it's not exciting, and I don't fancy taking it pack one, pick one. Kythian's Tactics, a sorcery for 1 white. Creatures you control get +2/+1 until end of turn, and if you have Spell Mastery, they also gain Vigilance. This spell pumps your entire team, which means it's best if you're going wide rather than tall. The Vigilance can help you make an attack and still have creatures back to block if you're racing, but you have to telegraph it by casting it in your first main phase. It's a reasonable card, but I don't want to take it first. Evolving Wilds, a land. You tap it and sacrifice it, you search your library for a basic land card, then put it onto the battlefield tapped. Then shuffle your library. Evolving Wilds is one of the few mana fixes in Magic Origins, but that's not really powerful enough for me to want to take it pack one, pick one. Titan Strength, an instant for red. Target creature gets +3/+1 until end of turn. Scry 1. This is a reasonable combat trick that gives a large amount of power for the mana. You also get the bonus of scrying. If you want to, if you're in a desperate situation, you could cast it on an opponent's creature in their end step just for the scry. It's a fun card. I don't think I want to take it first. Clash of Wills, an instant for X and blue. Counter target spell unless its controller pays X. Whilst this is a reasonable counter spell, in that you can probably use it to counter any of your opponent's spells if you leave enough mana up, counter spells aren't a great prospect in draft. Especially in Magic Origins, which is a pretty aggressive format. If you leave your mana up to counter a spell, and then your opponent does nothing, you've wasted your turn. Overall, this probably isn't going to be my pick. Towergeist, a 2/2 spirit for 3 and a blue. It has flying, and when it enters the battlefield, look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand and the other into your graveyard. On the vanilla test, this doesn't do too well. A 2/2 flyer for 4 is a little expensive. But the ability basically says, draw a card. A 2/2 flyer for 4 that says draw a card is pretty good. And then you get your choice of the best card out of the 2 on top of your deck. Towergeist is a pretty strong card. It may well be the pick in this pack. Sidled Starfish, an 0/3 starfish for 1 and a blue, with the ability tap, scry 1. In Theros block, Sidled Starfish was an all-star. It could come down on turn 2 and block a reasonable number of your opponent's early plays, and it gave you consistent scrying every turn. In Magic Origins, well, things are a little different. The format's a lot faster, it's a lot more aggressive. You can't take the time to keep playing defensive creatures early and then scry your way to a winning hand. That said, an 0/3 does hold back a number of early drops, so it may well have the power to be the pick in this pack. Our rare is Evolutionary Leap, an enchantment for 1 and a green. With the ability, green, sacrifice a creature, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This card essentially says, green, blank your opponent's removal spell. Essentially, you can say anytime your opponent spends a card to try and remove one of your creatures, you can sacrifice it and get a replacement creature. That's not bad. I actually opened some of these in my pre-releases, and I didn't play them. In retrospect, I think that was a very poor decision. Whilst it doesn't directly affect the board, I think Evolutionary Leap is good enough to consider picking first. And we have a checklist card and an advert. Let's have a quick review of what we've got. And here's our pack. The main cards I'm looking at here are Towergeist and Evolutionary Leap. Towergeist affects the board immediately and replaces itself in your hand. Evolutionary Leap, on the other hand, potentially allows you to blank your opponent's removal. While I'd like to pick Evolutionary Leap, the fact that it doesn't immediately affect the board is a little troublesome. Therefore, my pick for this pack is Towergeist. Well, that's about all we've got time for today. If you disagree with my choice, then please let me know in the comments below. Have a good day now.